Finally, we have launched a sewing pattern for this very simple wrap dress. I am so excited because you can wear this dress to work, for a day, to brunch, or to a party. I hope you will enjoy this sewing tutorial. This dress is an advanced beginner level sewing project. It's very quick and easy to make. I would say the only tricky part is the binding around the neckline and opening. But don't hesitate to use an iron, then it will be quite simple to do. The inner front panel has a button that connects to side seams, so this dress would stay closed. The outer front panel has a belt that you can wrap around the waist and tie. For this project you will need a jersey knit fabric that has at least 35% of stretch. I will be using this viscose rib knit. Feel free to use any other types of jerseys as long as they are stretchy enough. You will also need matching thread. One button approximately 1 cm in diameter. It's okay if it is slightly larger or smaller, and technically it doesn't even have to be in the same color because it will stay inside and no one will see it. Plus we need a tiny bit of narrow elastic band, I would say 7 mm wide and 4 cm long. If you don't have a cover stitch machine, I highly recommend to use twin needle for hems. If you don't have it, I have linked a tutorial video how to make 4 cover stitch hems without a cover stitch machine. For this project I will mostly use a serger, but if you don't have it, don't worry. I have linked below a tutorial video what sewing machine stitches you can use instead of a serger. I am going to use the Sunday wrap dress pattern, which you can find in our Etsy and online stores. The links are down in the description. This pattern comes in A0 format, which you can print at a copy shop, and in US letter A4 format, which you can print with any normal printer. The good news is that there are only 6 details. Bring attention to the straight grain guideline here. You can cut this detail either way. I chose to place it along the straight grain because it would look better with my rib knit fabric. Otherwise, you can place it cross grain, especially if it allows you to save some fabric. Let's start by cutting all the pattern details. My fabric is exceptionally narrow, so I had to really squeeze everything. You can take a look in the tutorial file. There is a page with cutting layout. It is only a suggestion, of course. Perhaps you have a wider fabric and you will be able to place the details even more efficiently, but it could be a great starting point. Don't forget to mark all the notches. You can either use a marker or make small cuts in the seam allowance with your scissors. There are notches at the side seams, at the front opening, and the sleeves and armholes. This will help us a lot later to match the details together. We are ready to start sewing. Lay the front panel on the back panel with the right sides facing. Pin the shoulder seam. Serge or sew 1 cm apart from the edge. I'm sorry about my finger. I dropped a vacuum cleaner on it. It wasn't that painful, but it was messy. I was afraid to stain this light fabric and I didn't have any plasters at studio, so I wrapped it with a scotch tape. Press the shoulder seams towards the back panel. Now we need to prepare the belt. Ignore that seam I have already made there. It's because I didn't have enough fabric and I had to improvise. Fold both panels on half lengthwise. Make a stitch along the shortest edge and then along the longest edge, but leave one ending open. Take something dull and flip the belt details from the inside out. I am using my fabric marker to do this. While we are here, we can push the corners more towards the edge. Press the belt details. Try to push the seam as close to the edge as possible. I always start by pressing the edge with the seam and then I press the whole belt. Lay the shortest belt panel on the side seam, on the right side of the dress. Place it between the notches and pin. Lay the longest belt panel in between the notches on the opening. This belt has to go on the opposite front panel. Do a simple straight stitch 5 mm apart from the edge. There are two binding tapes. Lay them with the right sides together and stitch the shortest edge. Make the stitch 1 cm apart from the edge. Press the seam open. Lay this binding tape along the opening and the neckline. Binding tape's right side is matching the dress wrong side. I will repeat, the right side with the wrong side. It is very important. If you want, you can pin around. I personally prefer to start sewing from one edge and I lay the binding tape on the dress along the way. Don't be surprised that the binding tape is longer than you actually need. Out of everything, I find it very stressful to match binding tapes if they are cut precisely to the necessary length. I always cut it slightly longer and then I trim off the excessive amount. Make the stitch 7 mm apart from the edge. Press the seam towards the binding tape. Fold the binding tape in a way its raw edge is matching the seam allowance's raw edge. Now fold the binding tape again in a way it covers the previously made stitch. Once you fold it, press over. You can also use pins or you can hand stitch to keep the binding in place. Make a stitch 1 mm apart from the folded edge. I know, stitching a ditch would be a fancier method, but this is much faster and the only difference is that the stitch is slightly more noticeable. Honestly, I just couldn't figure out a better way. You see the belt at the opening is facing towards the side seam, but we need it towards the opposite side. So I am folding it over the binding and let's make a stitch that connects the belt with the binding. In case if this is too thick for your sewing machine, you might as well do a few hand stitches. Press the binding around the opening. Now we need to add the sleeves to armholes. Take your sleeve and find a notch at the middle. This notch goes against the shoulder seam, as well as match the notches at the front. Lay the sleeve on the dress with the right sides facing. I will not pin the sleeve completely. I always start by matching the edges, then I focus on matching the notches, so I barely use any pins. If you do, just be careful to take them out right before they go to serger's knife or right before your sewing machine's needle goes over them. I am giving a very light press. Lay the dress with right side towards inside and lay it in a way the side seams are matching. Pin the side seam starting from the sleeve hem up to the armhole and then to the dress hem. Make sure you are matching the armhole seam and the notches at the waist. Also, make sure that the belt at the side seam stays on the right side of the dress. Stitch starting from the sleeve hem up to the armhole and then down to the dress hem. Press the seam towards the back panel. Knit the hem of the dress and also the sleeves. If you have a cover stitch machine, you can skip this step, but today I am going to use a twin needle, and with twin needle I feel like it's better to knit the hems first. Fold 2.5 centimeters of the hem allowance and pin. I know there are people that can just fold the hem and stitch. I'm not one of them. In fact, I feel that basic hems for me is one of the most difficult parts in sewing. You see, I avoid pinning, let alone hand stitching, but when it comes to hems, I do it all. It's the same as I cannot draw a straight line freehand. I always need a ruler or something like that. Now take the regular needle with the thread in a different color and stitch right at the middle of the neatening stitch. If you neaten the edge with the serger, then stitch along the serger's second needle thread. This stitch has two purposes. One, of course, is to keep the fabric together, but also we will use it as a guideline. We will make a stitch from the right side of the fabric and we will not see where this edge is. So this guideline will ensure that we stitch through this edge at all times. Of course, if you feel very confident and you have good experience with this, you can skip hand stitching. Some fabrics are sort of transparent and then you also can see through and so on, but this is the most secure way how to hem. Do exactly the same steps for sleeve hems. I have changed my regular needle to the twin needle. I set up two threads and threaded them in each needle. Mostly I use stitch length 3.5. You might need to experiment with this thread tension. It's better that you try out the stitch on a scrap fabric first, but use the exact same fabric as for this dress, because the setting might vary for different fabrics. This time I got lucky to use the same tension as I normally would. Use that hand stitch as a guideline that goes exactly through the middle of both needles. As I mentioned, you need to work from the right side of the dress because the top part of the fabric will have straight stitches, while other side will have kind of a zigzag stitch. If you have a cover stitch machine, the workflow is pretty much the same. I just wouldn't neaten the edge. I have seen people that do neaten and then do cover stitch, but I don't really get why would they do the texture step. It is possible to do a backstitch with twin needle, but I was afraid that my sewing machine will not like it because my fabric is rather thick, so I left longer tails of threads and hid them inside the seam. Take out the hand stitching thread. Work with the sleeve hems the same way as you did with the dress hem. The final step besides ironing is adding the button and a loop. Sew on a button at the opening edge that doesn't have the belt at the opening. Alternative way, if you don't have a button and elastic, would be to use ready-made ribbons, or you can prepare small ties from the same fabric that are around 50 centimeters long and tie them together. If you don't add any closure there, you might risk that the neckline and slit at some points get too revealing. Maybe it's not such a bad thing, but it's up to you to decide. Find the exact spot on the opposite side seam where you want the button to connect. Take your elastic and trim only as much to make a tight loop for the button, plus approximately 1.5 centimeters of seam allowance. You can use a sewing machine to stitch on the elastic, but I felt like it's easier to stitch it on with some hand stitches. Press the hems with all the love you have and give some press to the whole dress and you have finished. Please let me know in the comments what kind of fabric did you choose. Leave us a like if you found this tutorial useful and subscribe to our channel for more sewing and knitting tutorials. Bye!